Right, welcome back to the next part of Resist. We're going to start with a chapter called Crash Landing today, and then we'll read a chapter called Wolves and the Battle of the Bridge. Continue thinking about what dangers she encounters and if Samaria is being brave or foolish. Crash Landing. Samaria threw herself out of the way as the airplane roost by overhead. It hit the ground with a sickening crunch, bouncing once, twice, and then flipping straight up in the air, tail first, as the front end carved up the earth. Crash, crash, smash! It was so loud, the whole of France had to hear it. The plane slammed back down, flat on the ground, but kept moving. Samaria covered her ears as the thing slid, twisted, and skidded towards the hedgerow at the end of the clearing, and then wham! The plane hit a tree and stopped dead in its tracks. Samaria peeked up from where she lay on the ground, and Serrano trotted up beside her nervously. Was it an Allied bomber the Nazis had shot down? Samaria braced for the explosion. But if it was a bomber, it would have been filled with bombs after all. And even if it had dumped all of its bombs, its tanks would be full of petrol to run its engines. Samaria held her breath, waiting. One of the plane's wings snapped off and fell to the ground, and Samaria jumped. But nothing went boom. Had the crew survived the landing? Just the day before, they might have needed the help of the resistance to find an escape route from Germany-occupied France. Today, Invasion Day, it was Samaria who needed their help. If they were alive, Samaria pulled herself up and approached the plane cautiously. She was still afraid it was going to blow up. Worse, it didn't have the usual markings of an Allied plane. Was it a German plane? The Germans didn't have many planes left, but it could be. But it didn't look like a regular airplane either. It was small and boxy, and Samaria got closer. She was stunned to see that the wing that had broken off was made of wood and canvas. The whole thing was made of wood and canvas. It didn't have any propellers either. It was a glider, not an airplane. But what was it doing here, now? And where was the crew? Why hadn't anyone come out of it? Samaria crept up to the open door on the side of the glider and peeked inside. It was dark, but she could make out a couple dozen shapes. More dummies. They sat slumped over in their seats, helmets loitering to the side. Samaria's heart sank all over again. She couldn't believe it. She understood making the Nazis chase dummies dropped by parachutes, but what's the point of crash landing a plane full of Ruperts? Unless they were all going to explode. Samaria drew back from the doorway. She had to get out of here. But where was Serrano? Yip, yip, yip. Serrano was inside the plane. He was running up and down the aisle of the glider, barking at the dummies. Serrano, Serrano, come out of there, Samaria cried. It's going to blow up. But Serrano was not coming out. Samaria was going to have to go in and get him. Samaria took a step inside the glider, and it creaked and groaned. Serrano was hopping around at the back of the plane, yipping at the dummies. Samaria couldn't reach him, not without going farther down the aisle. She turned sideways, trying to slide by the Ruperts, but there wasn't enough room for her. She brushed up once again against one of the dummies, and it slid forward in its seat. She yipped louder than Serrano as she jumped back, and the dummy groaned. Groaned? Samaria looked closer. It was not a dummy after all. None of them were. The glider was filled with unconscious soldiers. The next chapter is titled Wolves. Samaria poked the groaning man, gently but firmly. He shook his head and moaned. All around Samaria more of the dummies came to life, rubbing their faces and cracking their necks. Serrano yipped happily, and one of the soldiers shushed him. They must all have been knocked unconscious by the crash, and they were all just now coming to. A soldier at the front slapped himself awake and unhooked himself from his seat. He was short, but he held himself with such authority that Samaria was sure he was the leader. He had pale skin, wide shoulders, and a bald head underneath his crooked helmet. He straightened his helmet, whispered urgently in English to the other soldiers, then asked Samaria a question she did not understand. She didn't speak English, and she said so in French. Major Hughes wants to know who you are, and how long we've been out, another soldier near her said in badly accented French. He was a young white man with black hair and glasses. "Oh, my name is Samaria," she told the soldiers. In her surprise she had forgotten to use her code name, but it hardly seemed to matter now. "And you just crashed a few minutes ago. You almost landed on me." The soldier reported what she had said to the major at the front of the plane, and Major Hughes whispered again to his soldiers, urging them out of the plane. Samaria was suddenly caught up in a flurry of soldiers collecting their weapons and trying to climb out of the glider. "Pardon us, miss, but we've got to get moving," the soldier who spoke French said. "You and your dog, could you get out of the way?" Samaria grabbed Serrano and slipped back out of the glider. The soldiers quickly followed, still cracking their necks and blinking, trying to wake themselves up. "Where are you from? Are you here for the invasion?" Samaria asked the soldier who spoke French. "We came from England. My name is Clark," he replied. "And yes, we're part of the invasion. Now run along. We've got a bridge to capture." "The bridge over the sluice? That's just down the road," Samaria said. "Can I take you there?" "You know where it is?" Clark asked. Samaria did. Clark told the major, and Hughes agreed to have Samaria show them the way. Samaria was delighted. Not only did this mean the invasion was happening here and now in Normandy, but if the English soldiers were going to take back the bridge over the Sluice River, that meant they were headed north, too, the same direction Samaria was going. That meant they were marching towards Beirut, where her mother and the other prisoners were being held. There was a chance her mother would be saved by the dawn after all. Samaria waved for Clark and the other soldiers to follow her. There was no time to waste. They looked a frightful sight, Samaria thought as they snuck through the small woods. 20-some camouflaged soldiers each carried machine guns at their hips and grenades at their belts. All of them had shoe black on their face, all but the two black soldiers who blended in with the shadows. They moved as one, sulking silently through the woods like a pack of wolves taking to their prey. Never a misstep, never a moment of hesitation. Samaria shivered. She was glad that they were on her side. They came to the edge of the wood, and Samaria pointed. Just ahead of them was the bridge that they had been sent to take. Samaria and her mother had avoided those water crossing on their way south to pass along the news of the invasion to the French resistance. It was a steel girder bridge, bigger and newer than most in Normandy, and its metal trestles loomed big and dark above them. To one side of the road, the Nazis had built a concrete turret to house an anti-tank gun, and Samaria could see two figures, Nazi guards, walking the length of the bridge. Bakow! A rifle shot made Samaria jump, and one of the German guards on the bridge crumpled and fell. The English were already attacking. "Go, go, go!" Major Hughes yelled, and suddenly Samaria was in the middle of a battle. And the Battle of the Bridge. Bang, bang, tut, 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 tut. Samaria dropped to the ground and pulled Serrano close as the bullets flew. The English soldiers thundered up onto the steel bridge, their boots ringing like a hailstorm on a tin roof. The second German guard fired a flare gun into the air, and it lit up the scene for Samaria. She watched as Clark, the soldier who spoke to her in French, cut the second German sentry down with his machine gun. English soldiers threw grenades into the pillbox, and pow, 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 it exploded into a cloud of concrete dust and flames. The Germans, who weren't on guard duty, were awake now, and rifles barked on both sides, but the English soldiers swarmed the bridge and the adjoining bunker. Samaria saw a German guard shoot another sun-bright flare into the sky, then turn tail and run. German machine gunners peppered the attackers, and bullets pinged off the metal struts of the bridge. Samaria saw Clark rush the sand-bagged trenches where the German gunners were hiding, and fire a burst with his own machine gun. Another grenade took care of the rest of the German soldiers in the trench with a boom. There was a second pillbox at the other end of the bridge. Samaria heard its big gun fire. Pow! But it did not hit anyone. It was made to hit the tanks, not men, and all it did was blast a crater in the grass 100 meters away. Samaria lost sight of Clark, but she saw another English soldier fire a shoulder cannon at the pillbox right before it was hit by a German bullet and went down. The missile he fired was right on target, though, and the second pillbox exploded in a gust of fire and smoke. From the sound of things, there was another machine gun nest on the other side of the bridge. Samaria heard the poom, poom, poom of grenades, and the heavy machine gun fire stopped. And then, as quickly as it all had begun, the battle was over. The bridge belonged to the English. The first attack of the invasion Samaria had been witness to was a success. Samaria waited a few minutes after the last of the gunshots had been fired. Then she let Serrano go and carefully made her way over to the bridge. Serrano ran from place to place along the bridge, sniffing and investigating. The pillboxes were still smoking, and there were scorch marks all over the metal girders. A few of the English soldiers had been wounded, and Samaria saw a medic bandaging them up. The only man who died was the one Samaria had seen fire the shoulder cannon that took out the second pillbox. There were German bunkers with soldiers hiding in them, apparently, and the major dispatched soldiers to clear the trenches with phosphorus grenades. Major Hughes stopped briefly to mourn the man who had died and was just as quickly talking into a radio telephone connected to a pack on the other soldier's chest. But where was Clark? Samaria wanted to talk to him. He needed to tell him that they needed to get moving on to Beirut. And that is the end of our reading today. Make sure you answer in your Canvas page, what dangers does Samaria encounter today? And do you think she is being brave or do you think she is being foolish? And whatever you decide, just make sure that you have evidence from the text to support your answer. Thank you. I hope you have a good rest of the day.